Hi, my name is James McGilvery. I'll be talking about the case of Matt Baker. In today's world, there's almost no crime that does not involve computer forensics. Computer forensics is one of the fastest growing jobs in the United States of America's criminal justice system. For one reason, it is because almost every person in the United States has some piece of technology that they can communicate with, or some piece of technology that tracks their every step. Take me, for example. Some technology devices I have include an iPhone XR, an Apple Watch Series 3, and a Dell Intel Core i5 8th generation laptop. All these devices I can use to communicate with other people, whether it's in the country or around the world. I can be tracked everywhere I go with it by the United States government, and all of my data can be monitored by the United States government. With that being said, nowadays it is very hard to get away with any crime because almost all crimes involve some form of technology. Which brings us to the case that we'll be discussing today about a man named Matt Baker. Matt Baker was a preacher, specifically a Baptist preacher, in Waco, Texas, and he was married to a woman named Carrie, and the two of them even had 2 young daughters. They were a beautiful family, and they were even said to have had a whirlwind romance, said by Carrie's mother, Linda Doolin. All that came to a sudden halt when Carrie Baker supposedly killed herself by drinking wine coolers and then eventually overdosing on pills. Currently, at the time of Carrie's untimely death, Matt Baker and Carrie Baker had their 2 daughters. One who went by the name of Kenzie Baker, who was the oldest daughter and was only 9 years old at the time, and Grace Baker, who was the younger daughter who was only 5 years old at the time. The tragic thing was that Matt and Carrie had another daughter, but due to a terrible brain tumor, sadly passed away 7 years prior to the death of her mother. This was the leading factor in the case as to why Carrie Baker may have committed suicide. Although Matt Baker had said his wife Carrie Baker had committed suicide, Carrie's side of the family was not so convinced. Lindsay Pick, Carrie Baker's cousin, went on to say that she would have never ever left her children, as said on the ABC News article. Carrie's side of the family went on to hire their own investigator because they had been repeatedly denied to open the case back up. Linda Doolin, Carrie Baker's mother, hired an attorney named Bill Johnson and his full team of investigators. Bill Johnson and his investigators needed more than just physical evidence. They needed access to Baker's digital devices. Once the team of investigators accessed Matt Baker's workplace server, they had some shocking discoveries. We got to parts of it that he showed he had searched terms like overdose and death by sleeping pills, said Johnston. All the team needed now was telephone evidence, but it was turned down hard, which was a huge blow to the team and the investigation. After being denied to be able to look at the telephone records, they were allowed to have an autopsy done. Here's a picture of Matt Baker and his 2 daughters. After all of this, Matt Baker was taken to jail for murder. He was put on trial. Eventually, Matt Baker's supposed mistress was brought to trial, and Matt Baker had actually told her about the murder, and Matt Baker had actually killed his wife to be with the mistress. The mistress's name is Vanessa Bowles, and she was given immunity if she admitted to all the lies that she had been going along with for all this time. Matt Baker had even told his lawyer from the first day that he had murdered his wife, Carrie Baker. The way Matt Baker had killed his wife, Carrie Baker, happened like this, in quotes. Under the guise of a romantic evening, Baker gave Carrie a mix of wine coolers and pills he said were sex stimulants. He said he handcuffed her to the bed, started kissing her and touching her all over until she fell asleep. But Bowles says Baker had filled the capsules with crushed Ambien to knock his wife out. Unquote. A quote from Vanessa Bowles. He said he kissed her on the forehead and either said, "Give Cassidy a hug for me," or "Give Cassidy a kiss for me." Unquote. Cassidy is their daughter who passed away from cancer with a brain tumor. Baker thought Carrie was dead, Bowles says, so he was startled when Carrie suddenly gasped for air. Vanessa Bowles said, he said, "Oh shit," and then he said he put the pillow on her face. And then he said he did this with his hand over her nose, so he was sure to suffocate her. These statements came straight from Vanessa Bowles, Matt Baker's mistress. The only warrant that was ever asked for was for the arrest of Matt Baker. They never seized any of his technology devices because they did not need to after reviewing the autopsy, and because they had a confession from Vanessa Bowles. Computer records were given up by Waco Center for Youth, and from these you can see that Matt Baker started looking into things such as overdosing and pills very early on. This is the Waco Center for Youth, where Matt Baker worked. Matt Baker also searched for a website which is known as Farm Billing. Farm Billing is a service that would handle your payments for people who have prescription medication. Matt Baker was also registered to another internet site under the alias of SecureRxCard. Computer forensic expert Noel Kirch was also able to testify that Baker had looked at pornographic websites and sites aimed at married adults who want to have affairs. This evidence too helped the prosecution to define Mr. Baker's character for the jury, as said on the Into Forensics website article. This crime is a perfect example of digital evidence. This crime is also a perfect example of how everything you search, type, send, say, basically anything you do on a digital device is tracked, and even if you delete it, it can always be retrieved. This crime goes that even when you think that you are in the clear, you never know how you may screw yourself. In this case, digital evidence, besides Vanessa Bowles' confession, is what solidified the fact that Matt Baker killed his wife. If Matt Baker had not searched terms like overdose and sleeping pills, he may have never been caught, and authorities may have actually believed that Carrie Baker committed suicide. Thanks to digital evidence, this criminal was put behind bars.